I'm Tina Dupuy, and you're watching TYT Network. With me is Tim Mahalski, and today we are talking about Huffington Post. Huffington Post is being sued by their bloggers who've been graciously working for free for the last 6 years. Here is a dirty secret that is not really talked about in media circles. Conservatives pay. They pay, and they pay well. I've been a freelance writer, or I am a freelance writer, and you have these liberals that will go, this is such a great cause, and someday we really hope to be able to pay you. And conservatives are like, here's money. So there's a bit of a difference, and we have right, and we have Arianna Huffington, who is the voice of the middle class. She's the champion for people who are working for a living, and she has this, this gigantic. It started off as a little startup project in 2005 in May, and then it kind of grew to this brand name. She sold it to AOL for $315 million. $100 million of it to her directly, and now she is the editor-in-chief of AOL Media.
Right.
Well, she's been, not only has, there's been a lot of people who have, they're saying there's 9,000 people who blog for her for free. Some of them have been very vocal and said that they are no longer going to post, and they've essentially had a strike. Now there's a lawsuit, and with us is Jonathan Tasini. Am I saying it right?
Tasini, close enough.
Good enough. So you are suing Arianna Huffington.
Yes, I'm suing her on behalf of all the bloggers as a class action lawsuit.
Is it technically a class action lawsuit yet, or you're hoping it will be?
The process is that a federal judge has to certify as a class, but we have filed it as a class action. I'm the named plaintiff on behalf of the class.
What is your goal with this?
Well, I think it's twofold. One is I think you laid out the situation quite brilliantly. I believe that that there's been unjust enrichment here and deceptive practices, that all those people who basically created the content for Huffington Post and made it a valued product, the fact is that particularly for that website, it's the bloggers that made it worthwhile to AOL to pay that huge sum. Arianna Huffington basically pocketed all that money and told everybody to just take a hike. She's not going to pay them a dime. So we want to get back money for those people who I think have been ripped off. And going forward, we want to use that pressure, in my view, to set a standard going forward of how people should be paid, not just at the Huffington Post, but hopefully set a standard for blogs all around the nation.
The optics of this have not been very good for Arianna. I mean, she first, when she heard about the strike, she said, go ahead and let them strike. And then she described blogging at Huffington Post as being so popular, or as being just this great exposure for anybody who wants to do it. And it really can't be both. Like, you can't have, no one's going to notice if you strike, but it's this huge opportunity for you to get exposure. She kind of painted herself into a corner with that. But here's something that I need to ask you, because they're at Huffington Post, they're going to criticize me if I don't. I saw that you also have posted on Daily Kos, and they don't pay their bloggers. They pay some of them. They pay their reporters, but they don't pay their people who have they call them diaries. What is the difference between Huffington Post, their labor practices, and Daily Kos?
Well, I also post on my own blog and other places. Let me go back to two things you mentioned, and then I'm happy to answer this question. The first thing is that Arianna Huffington's attitude was like Marie Antoinette: let them eat cake, to heck with them, I made all this money, they don't deserve anything. And in that way she has acted no different than the Waltons of Walmart, the CEOs of Goldman Sachs, just like any CEO. So the notion that the hypocrisy is just overwhelming. That's one thing. The other thing that I think is really important is that people are making a distinction between sort of the new world blogs, the electronic age, this kind of fear-mongering, the way in which writers and all creators have been exploited by the notion, well, you should be just happy to have your work seen and put out there. It goes back to the first printed page. Having organized writers as the president of the Writers Union for some years, I know that was the very fear that people were confronted with, just to ask to get paid in the old printed age. So that's 2 points I thought were very important to make. Now, on this point about blogging for Daily Kos, that's a very different place. It is a community site. It makes no bones about trying to create this huge, humongous, valuable commodity that gets sold then to any other entity. And I think what's really important is that people really got mobilized when this sale went to AOL. I think people were unclear and really unsure and were misled, in my view, about what Huffington Post was about. And here they turn around, they make a huge sale to AOL, and then Arianna Huffington basically says to all the people, hit the road. And I think that the foolishness about it and the greed and the hypocrisy and the narcissism that Arianna Huffington is exhibiting is evidenced by this very fact. Had she been smart enough and not self-centered in the way she is, and written checks to every single blogger for, I'm just going to throw out a number, $25, $50, whatever number, people would have been thrilled. They would have said, that's magnanimous, that's something we deserve, some recognition of our work, and she refused to do even that.
The number 3 story on the Huffington Post this morning was about that we're a nation of Winklevosses, you know, the twins that sued Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook. What's the difference between this? Because, you know, they sued him because they thought that he stole their idea, whereas you guys are suing because all the bloggers contributed to the Huffington Post's success, right?
Yeah, but that's not even apples and oranges. That's really very, very different situations, with all due respect.
One last question. When are we going to find out if there is going to be a class action suit? What's
now
the timeline?
You're asking a legal question.
Okay.
One thing I've learned is don't pretend like that I'm a lawyer, which I'm not.
Fantastic.
There's a process by which they respond, I think, in the next few weeks to the complaint. I'm sure there'll be motions to dismiss the case. We will actually have a chance to amend the complaint so we can add additional named plaintiffs. I don't honestly know when it will be certified as a class or not. The last point I'd like to make is that this lawsuit, in the same way that the suit I launched against the New York Times in 1993, which we won in the U.S. Supreme Court, this is only part of an organizing strategy. I'm working very closely with the Newspaper Guild, the National Writers Union, because you really have to use all the pressure points that are out there. The strike, the boycott. No progressive, no liberal should be writing for the Huffington Post until this is resolved.
As a fellow freelance writer, I know that the wages have gone down and down and down, and word count payment has gone down and down and down, and there's more people who want more writing for less money, and it's already a really difficult trade to ply, and the payment has gotten really bad. So I applaud your efforts. Thanks for calling in, Jonathan Tasini.
Thank you for having me.